All right, today I want to do something a little different than what I normally do and do like a podcast video. This video I'm going to call something along the lines of "You like Rob Liefeld and that's totally okay." I think it's a good title. So it's going to have like an overall thing about it, but I want to talk about Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld is a very polarizing character in comics. He is one of those guys that people either love him or hate him, and I'm sort of on the fence. And I know it's bad to be a fence sitter because usually you get eaten alive by both sides. It's like, why don't you like Rob Liefeld? Or why do you like Rob Liefeld? And I don't particularly like Rob Liefeld. I don't own a Rob Liefeld comic. I never will own a Rob Liefeld comic because Rob Liefeld doesn't really make me feel anything when I look at his work. There are artists that when I look at their work, I feel something deeply. It makes me want to draw, or it makes me inspired to draw. And, the likes of Tim Vigil, Simon Bisley, John Buscema, Neil Adams. Those guys really make me feel something. Whereas Rob Liefeld and a lot of those guys from that '90s image shit, they don't really make me feel anything. I look at Jim Lee and I just see a bunch of George Bridgman drawings with superheroes over it. It just doesn't make me feel anything. Mark Silvestri is probably the only guy from that image era that I'm like, okay, I really feel something when I read his stuff, and a lot of it's that early X-Men stuff. But anyways, I want to talk about Rob Liefeld in particular because he is the most divisive or the most problematic of those '90s comic book creators. And a lot of people go, Rob Liefeld can't draw, and that's not true whatsoever. Rob Liefeld can absolutely draw. I can guarantee that. Go look at that Hawk and Dove stuff that he did in the, I think it was late '80s, like '80, I want to say 80, 86, '87 probably, around that time, maybe a little bit earlier. Not quite sure on the date on that, but he can absolutely draw stuff. Looks serviceable. It looks like a comic book. It looks like house style stuff, but it looks good. Um, and then he went on and did some other stuff. He did New Mutants, which looked okay. But the problem with Rob is I feel like he was a procrastinator and he was always rushing. And a lot of people say, "Oh, Rob Liefeld can't draw feet." Rob Liefeld can absolutely draw feet. They don't look like a George Bridgman drawing of feet because feet are very difficult to draw, but they look like feet. And people say he can't draw hands, and again, it's not that high level of drawing that you see in some artists, but they look like hands when they're hands. And sometimes when you're on a schedule of, hey, you got to get 22 pages done in 20 days, is it much easier to draw feet, or is it much easier to put like grass over the feet or boxes over the feet? I remember watching a video with Todd McFarlane, I believe it was Todd McFarlane, who said, if you're not particularly good at drawing something, cover it up. And he's admitted that he did that, and everybody is over the moon when it comes to Todd McFarlane. When it comes to Rob Liefeld, he gets shit on, which I don't think is fair whatsoever. Again, Rob Liefeld doesn't make me feel anything when I look at his art, but he absolutely can draw. We get into this period. We get into this conversation of what is art? Is Rob Liefeld art? And I absolutely think Rob Liefeld is an artist, 100%. Rob Liefeld is absolutely an artist, and he also inspired a lot of artists. I mean, I look at when he was running, I believe it was called Extreme Studios, and you got a guy like Dan Fraga working under him. Dan Fraga is an unbelievably amazing artist, and I don't know if Dan Fraga would have been as successful as he is had it not been for Rob Liefeld. Maybe he would have been, but I feel like Rob Liefeld put him on that path of hey, you're an artist, work under me, and you're going to become this big artist that people like myself to this day look at. So Rob Liefeld is absolutely an artist, and that's why I kind of wanted to do this video, because he's such a divisive kind of guy, and a lot of people sort of shit on him all the time, and I don't necessarily think that's fair at all. I think about a guy like Jack Kirby. Like, people will look at Jack Kirby's artwork and they don't think it looks good. I've heard a lot of people say that Jack Kirby's artwork looks dirty, or it looks gross, or the people don't look like humans, or whatever it may be. And then when you start to draw, or you have any kind of understanding of art, you kind of look at Jack Kirby and you go, my God, this guy's unbelievable. Like, he's one of the best artists that's ever existed in any medium. The other thing I want to talk about when it comes to Rob Liefeld is you got to remember Rob Liefeld became successful when he was like in his early 20s. I think he was like 21, or maybe he's even like 19. I don't know what you were doing when you were 19, but when I was 19, I barely knew like math. Okay, like I barely knew like regular math, basic math, let alone know how to draw. And Rob Liefeld can absolutely draw, 100%. I think a lot of people shit on him too. I think he gets shit on by Todd McFarlane a lot of the time, and I think he gets shit on by guys like Mark Silvestri. And then we get into the thing of, well, Rob did a lot of sketchy shit, when Image was at its peak. I'm not a business person. I've never been involved in business, but people in business do shitty things, not just Rob Liefeld, right? Everybody does shitty things. And I think it's unfair to kind of shit on Rob for that reason, because everyone does shitty things in business. I mean, that's how you make money, I guess. I don't agree with it, but there's a lot of people who are very successful by shitting on other people and taking advantage of other people. I always like to separate the artist from the art from the artist, right? And then a lot of people go, well, Rob Liefeld said some controversial things on Twitter. I mean, ask me to show you somebody who hasn't said something controversial on the internet. I'll show you a toddler. I mean, we all say controversial shit. We all say things that maybe some people don't particularly think highly of. Do I think that it should represent whether Rob Liefeld is a good artist or not? No. I don't think it should represent anything involving Rob Liefeld's art ability. And that's the thing, is like art is subjective, right? We should be thankful that people are reading comics. And if people are inspired, I know a lot of people in their 40s, they're very much inspired by Rob Liefeld. I mean, those things were selling hundreds of thousands, millions of copies, which is something that, I mean, you couldn't even sniff that. I mean, we can't even, comic books, you'll be lucky if they sell 40,000 copies now, which is quite unfortunate. And I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that people don't look at it as an investment anymore, or now it's become a collector's market where there's 500 variants, and you get these collectors these morons who go and try to get their 9.8 CGCs that they're fucking never gonna read, and nobody wants them other than them and some moron who missed out on it, who's also a collector. I don't know. I'm gonna one of these days I'm gonna do a video on CGC, because oh god, read your fucking comics. And there's a lot of controversial guys in the industry. I mean, Frank Miller is one of those guys who's controversial. A lot of people go, oh, Frank's lost his mind. Yeah, okay. I mean, whatever. I'm not going to get into Frank losing his mind. There are people go, he can't draw the same way he did. The dude clearly had some, medical thing that happened. And, I mean, I like Frank Miller's art still. Frank Miller has always been an artist where his work looks fucking dirty. I mean, you look at it, I mean, it's dirty, it's gritty. I always say that, Frank Miller is like the Rolling Stones of art, of comic book art. It's dirty, it's gritty, it's gonna look dirty and gritty. It's always looked dirty and gritty. It's just more simplified now. I mean, even Jack Kirby in his later years simplified his work. Rob just kind of did it in his 20s and was on, hey, you got to get these 22 pages done in 20 days. And when you're under that kind of pressure, I mean, he missed a lot of deadlines. I don't know by how much. And I think the only one who was ever on time at Image was Todd. And you also got to remember, I mean, Rob was the first guy who was thrown to the wolves. He was the first guy at Image who put the book out. And, I would have been terrified, because of what happens if you sell 10,000 copies and nobody buys it. I mean, Rob's one of those guys who, as much as people don't want to admit it and don't want to accept it, he's very important to the comic book industry, and I liken him to, and this is sacrilegious, and I think this, but he reminds me a bit of Kirby in a lot of ways, where he sort of has kind of a method of doing things, and everybody has kind of their method of doing things. Like, Mike Mignola. Okay, he draws very simplified stuff, right? And, how come he doesn't get shit on like Rob Liefeld does? And I think Rob Liefeld just gets shit on because people just don't particularly like Rob Liefeld, which is totally fine. Whatever. You want to shit on him, that's fine. But what I'm basically saying is the whole point, we're coming together, we're coming to a point, and that point is, just be thankful that people read comics at this point. Just because an artist doesn't work for you or you don't like it doesn't mean you should shit on somebody because they enjoy that artist. Again, Rob Liefeld's art makes me feel nothing. I'm not a Rob Liefeld fan by any stretch of the imagination. He's done some good stuff, sure, like some good pieces here and there. But most of the time, 99% of the time, Rob Liefeld's artwork doesn't make me feel anything. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go shit on somebody who likes Rob Liefeld. If somebody tells me, hey, man, I really like Rob Liefeld, I'll be like, that's rad. You're reading comics. I'm happy you're reading comics. You're a fan of comics. That's great. And I feel like there's this weird thing, and I'm going to do a video on this as well, with gatekeeping. There's a lot of gatekeeping in comics. And it's just like, why? We'll be lucky if Batman sells 40,000 copies. Yet we have people gatekeeping whether Rob Liefeld is a good artist or not. And whether, well, you like this artist, so you don't know anything about comics. You're not a real comic book reader. I don't agree with that at all. So yeah, I just wanted to do this video. I'm putting some art in the background. Some of it's going to be Rob Liefeld. Some of it's not going to be Rob Liefeld. I'm just kind of doing like random art. I'll probably do all Rob Liefeld. And maybe when I look at the Rob Liefeld art, I will eat my hat and be like, you know what, Rob really can't draw. But he absolutely can draw. And I don't know. I just think that a lot of people are unfair to Rob. And again, Rob doesn't need me to defend him. I mean, the dude has sold millions of copies, hundreds of thousands of copies, millions of copies of comics. And the last person he needs defending him is me. But I'm kind of defending comic book readers, comic book enjoyers, because you sort of, I don't know, like you shouldn't feel guilty because you like something. I mean, should you feel guilty that you like shitty horror movies if you're a film fan that, you know, and then you hang out with a bunch of film people and they go, oh, that's not a real movie, you know? No, you should be able to enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. And I think it's really unfair to shit on Rob Liefeld fans. Rob Liefeld's doing fine. I think he'll do okay. There are people who go out and buy Rob Liefeld comics. I mean, Marvel still reprints his stuff. Those issues of like New Mutants stuff. Marvel still, and like his Deadpool stuff. I mean, he's doing fine. He's doing just fine. But I don't know. I think it's kind of shitty to shit on somebody because they're a fan of a certain artist or a certain comic, you know, or whatever it may be. Because just be thankful that people are interested in comics. Comics has become this weird thing where it's liked only by creators now, I feel like regular people don't like comics anymore. And I think a lot of it is because people just enjoy gatekeeping, and I think that's wrong. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I mean, the support for the channel has been amazing. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I have a couple videos I want to do. Like, for instance, I probably want to do a video on why the comic book industry is just not working right now. And I want to do a video on like gatekeeping, and I don't know. These are probably controversial topics. And you know, when you talk about comics, you know, people don't want to hear people bitch and complain. And I'm not really bitching and complaining. I'm kind of defending certain people who feel alienated. And that's the thing, is like you should not alienate. You should not alienate a creator, and you should not alienate somebody who's a fan of a creator. Because you don't know what that means to them. I don't know what, you know, Deadpool's first appearance means to somebody. I don't know, you know, what anything that Rob Liefeld has done for somebody. You don't know if that was the first comic book that somebody read and then they became an amazing comic book artist, and now they make that indie book that you enjoy, and sort of you alienate that person, and then that person sort of goes, maybe I don't want to do comics anymore. So, yeah, that's kind of just why it was just kind of a quick-ish video I wanted to do. But I really do appreciate the support, guys. I have 700 and some odd subscribers. I'm trying to get to 1,000. I never in a million years would have ever thought I would have 700 people subscribing to my channel. That's absolutely amazing. The views have been great, and I appreciate you guys. And, yeah, this is, you know, it's totally okay to like Rob Liefeld. That's totally fine.